Hello! Today we're going to be talking about both Song of Achilles and Circe by Madeline Miller. To begin with Song of Achilles, am I trapped for this relationship? Yes. Do I have concerns? Also yes. If you are unaware, this is a retelling of Achilles and the Trojan War, specifically looking at the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus. Patroclus. I'm gonna say Patroclus because that vibes more with my white Canadian girl accent, okay? Sorry about it. What I like about Madeline Miller's approach to doing her retellings is that she picks characters to be like the focus of her narrative that are outsiders and outcasts in various different ways, which makes them very well positioned to have both insider knowledge, but then also be positioned in a point of critique. In terms of gender and sexuality, there's a lot going on. Throughout the book, there is the tension about their relationship, one in meeting quite young and starting out as friends, and like whether or not the relationship would become romantic and sexual, and then also how their relationship potentially pushes against the norms for what it meant for boys to be lovers versus men. In terms of gender, when we look at Achilles, he's written in an interesting way because on the one hand, he's the literal epitome of ideal masculinity, right? He's literally a fucking demigod. He is literally beyond human in his masculine abilities in terms of warfare, right? But at the same time, when we are in the situation where Achilles is hiding out, okay, in a court where he's basically pretending to be a woman, Patroclus discusses that he's very comfortable with dressing as a woman. Like he doesn't really have any qualms and that it's like not a big deal for him and it doesn't like look, you know, different or weird on him. There is an ease with which he can cross gender boundaries in terms of dressing, but it's because he's literally a demigod. You know what I'm saying? Because he is beyond like the human norm of a person. Then we also have Patroclus, who places himself in opposition to Achilles sometimes, but also the rest of the men around him in terms of being insufficiently masculine or falling short of the masculine standard, right? He's not a fighter, never wanted to be, that's not his vibe, you know what I'm saying? So it's also interesting because from Patroclus's perspective, we also see him observing the amount of sexual violence around him. So sexual assault is always present in the story, like there's always an awareness of it. And Patroclus observing, again, as part of his insufficient masculinity, that he's not engaging in sexual violence as like a way to fulfill the standard. Continuing with gender, there are 4 women characters in this book beyond specific like characters of the Trojan War that are like mentioned or discussed in passing, like Helen, for instance. I was fine with 2 out of the 4 of those representations and how they were written. So in terms of Achilles' mom, Thetis, I think was really well done. She was just like a very scary and powerful nymph, water goddess person, and like work. And then I also really enjoyed Briseis. Is that Briseis? That's what I'm gonna go with. Enjoyed her character and that whole situation. But the other 2 that I had issues with, the first one is Patroclus's mother. I didn't understand why his mother needed to be simple. There didn't seem to be any actual like canonical reference or reason for that to be the case. I also don't really understand what it added to the story, and it didn't really add anything to a discussion about like disability in the ancient world, which is absolutely a part of disability studies. So I don't really understand what the point of that was, especially because, as just mentioned, there's a lot about gender and sexuality that is so thoughtful and intentional, and then to have that just kind of thrown in for seemingly no reason, like for why? Hello? Diademita was a mess. Oh my god, that section was rough. And I kind of get what she was doing in terms of like a scorned woman thing, but I don't know. And then wrapped up within that characterization is the like unconsensual sexual moment, like ugh. In terms of race, which we're gonna have a more fulsome discussion with at the end, the only thing that really comes up is that when they go to Troy, it's Anatolia. There is like some discussion that the Anatolians are more like tanned looking and don't like speak the same language. My other issue with this book is that it is too long. is too long, okay? Especially the Trojan War, there was such a huge lull, okay? And like, I get it. How do you write about something in an interesting way that's 9 years long? But like, I just really strongly believe deep in the cockles of my heart that this really could have been edited. To move on to Circe, hello. I had some trepidations about reading this because it was just recommended by so many different people, and I was also wary because I suspected that there would be sexual assault as a part of the story, which there is. I did a lot of research to figure out like where exactly in the story it occurs, because I knew that that would just help me actually be able to engage with the book better. If you want any information about that or Song of Achilles or literally any other book I ever talk about on this channel, please just let me know. I very, very much enjoyed the ways that the gods and goddesses and nymphs, etc., were discussed in this book. I think, again, because she is positioned as both an insider but an outcast, it was a really interesting way to kind of delve into the different dynamics between the Olympians and the Titans and just like general god and goddess bullshit happening, you know what I'm saying? My favorite part of this book is when she's talking about witchcraft and when she's like becoming a witch, which is after like kind of the first third of the book. Oh my god, I loved it so much. I could have read about that forever, okay? I think a lot of people felt like that's where the lull was in the story, and I say no, there could have been more of it, if anything else. I loved the way that Madeline Miller described witchcraft and what it really was and how it happened, and her just like collecting all her herbs and like having, I got so into it that I was like, I am also a witch, okay? Also, some stuff going on with gender and sexuality in this one. Let's get into it. Firstly, in terms of, again, gender dynamics and assault, like I said, there is a specific moment. It's very much a part of her, not her origin story, but a huge part in terms of the course of her life. It's also retrospectively discussed in terms of Circe later in the book reflects upon the fact that she was kind of surprised that she hadn't been assaulted earlier, and specifically the fact that nymphs, which is like what she is as well as a witch, nymphs were like known among the gods and goddesses and mortal men for being like pretty and alluring and easy to catch, basically. So they were like huge targets for assault. Sexuality as fluid is very much taken for granted and is kind of the standard throughout the book. Alluded to, I guess, the possibility that she could sleep with women, but she only ever has lovers that are men, and that seems to be her only like focus and interest. Another choice that is so interesting to me, that is so different from Song of Achilles, is that, so Song of Achilles has not like explicit, but there's somewhat detailed like love or sex scenes, very euphemistic language, but it's like there is description, you know what I mean? There's lots of like warm spurts and such, which I was not prepared for that specific euphemism, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it is a part of the story in like a somewhat detailed way. Whereas this book is very much fade to black, which is a stark difference and contrast, and I'm very interested in that choice. This book to me reads like it is very much written by a mother, and it was a take on motherhood. It was a perspective that I really appreciated, and I actually am really glad it exists, because even though I think we're getting more open in terms of talking about like many different aspects of motherhood and the way that it actually just like sucks, like straight up in a lot of ways, and it's okay to say and acknowledge that, but I also think it makes it really easy to engage with that when it's written in like this kind of a fantastical setting. Hi, hello, it's editing Ileana. So when I originally recorded the part of the video talking about Circe and race, I realized after that I had actually forgotten some important things. So because Circe is more about the realm of immortality and like the level of gods and goddesses, that's actually where we see more discussions of that. In particular, when Circe is talking about her siblings going off to Persia or taking up with Sumerian goddesses, or about how much she wants to like go to Egypt and explore that part of the world. So there's an understanding of to the east, you know what I'm saying? So although it's like a little bit orientalistic in terms of going to the east and finding more exotic liberation in those parts of the world, I still think it does something important in terms of highlighting like the other civilizations and mythologies that are around them. Like in particular, the idea of gods and goddesses from different mythologies and civilizations like coexisting, I think is really interesting. But in terms of the mortal world, race is never really brought up. I mean, part of it is the fact that she spends most of this book like by herself on an island, so like I can kind of see it. But in general, some of the frustration I have like with this genre of the like feminist retelling is that although there are lots of stuff around gender and sexuality, there's so much less about race. And although I understand that like not every book can be everything, and you know, making white women write out of their league is maybe, you know, not the solution all the time necessarily. Not being a classicist myself, but having studied ancient Greek philosophy, ancient Greek political theory, I know how central race is as an organizational structure within ancient Greek civilization, right? When we're talking about what it means to be a citizen, right? What it means to belong to the public realm and not the oikos, okay? Not the yogurt, okay? A different kind of iteration of the public-private sphere. And what it meant to be Greek versus a barbarian, and the differentiation between men of a certain class being able to be citizens versus slaves, women, and children, and why they are supposed to be in the realm of the oikos because they are closer to barbarians than a citizen is. It's just so ingrained in their social organization that it's very wild to me in this genre that it just doesn't come up more. Like, what? So I definitely want to kind of reach out a little bit more. Started looking into Rick Riordan's imprint, which is very like own voices focused in terms of middle grade YA, in terms of talking about mythology. If you have any other recommendations for like folklore, mythology, retellings that have kind of like a critical focus, but you know, maybe do a little bit more than these books do, please let me know. For the love of God, please let me know. Those were my hopefully coherent thoughts about both Song of Achilles and Circe by Madeline Miller. Please let me know if you've read these and what you thought of them. I'm very curious. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye!